Welcome to another segment of Tree Talk. I'm Jamie Dahl with Central State University Extension. I'm here with Marne Titchenell with Ohio State University Extension, and Marnie's going to be sharing with us about insects and their connection to the oak ecosystem, so stay tuned. Welcome to another episode of Tree Talk. I'm here with Marne Titchenell, and we are going to be talking about insects and their connection to the oak ecosystem. So, Marne, can you tell us a little bit about insects' reliance on oak ecosystems?
Right. So our oaks are incredibly important when it comes to our insects. And one group that I'll focus on are the lepidopterans. So if you're not familiar with lepidopterans, that's the order of insects that makes up our butterflies, our moths, and our skippers. What's a skipper? Kind of between a butterfly and a moth. We'll just leave it at that. Okay. So when it comes to oaks, they are important host plants for a lot of those species. And so a host plant, that's the plant that the female is going to lay her eggs on. And there are other attractive components of oaks, but we'll just leave it at that for now. But when we look at all of the different species of oaks in the United States, they are responsible for being a home for over 500 different species of lepidopterans. So I think it's 534 species to be exact, which that's a lot of species.
Yeah, that's impressive.
That's a surprising number. So, you know, not only is that important for the insects, and I'll share with you one of my favorite quotes. It's by E.O. Wilson, and he said that insects are the little things that run the world. And that's especially true when it comes to our terrestrial ecosystems, because our insects make up, you know, the base of just about every food chain out there, food web, I should say, out there. So they're incredibly important. We were talking about blue jays and other songbirds really rely on insects. The red-eyed vireo, a songbird that you will constantly hear in the forests of southern Ohio and eastern Ohio during the summertime, they are eating about 100% insects, and about 50% of that is caterpillars. So birds like that and a lot of our other migratory species are really depending on those insects as a food source.
Wow. And I know it seems like there's a lot in the news now about insect populations crashing and
yes.
some concerns specifically with Lepidoptera and pollinators.
Right. You're exactly right. So there's definitely been research that has looked at and found declines in our terrestrial insect populations, which is incredibly concerning to me. As I said, they make up those base of many food webs. But when it comes to our pollinators, most definitely. You hear a lot in the news about the monarch butterfly and their populations declining. You hear a lot about bees declining. And so, you know, when we look at our oak ecosystems and how they are important to pollinators, we find that they also are very important to those pollinators as well. Mm-hmm. And I think folks don't normally think about a woodland being an important habitat for pollinators. A lot of times we get that vision of a sunlit meadow with flowers, and that is important pollinator habitat, especially as far as nectar resources. But in the forest, that's where you find the host plants. And for some of our pollinators, namely our native bees, many of them are solitary nesters. They're nesting in the ground, or they're nesting in cavities. And when I say a cavity, I don't just mean a hole in a tree. It could be a hollow stem or a hollow branch. And what better place to find a bunch of those but in a forest?
But in the forest.
Yeah.
Wow. So
yeah.
So really, once again, the forest as a whole, but then, you know, specifically the oak ecosystem having some really important roles.
Right. Specifically for the pollinators, and then of course, you know, there's the role of what pollinators do in the ecosystem, pollination. So I'll share with you a little slide that I put together to kind of display that. So what you're looking at, this is a sweat bee. It is a species here in Ohio, and it is a ground nester. And so what you're looking at is the female, and she's kind of working on building a little nest. She'll kind of dig out a little section in the ground. Actually, she's not. She's emerging at this point. But what the female will do is she'll dig this little cavity in the ground. She will put a little bit of bee bread in it, and then she'll lay an egg on it. And that little piece of bee bread, which is nectar and pollen, is all that egg needs to survive into adulthood. It'll emerge like you're looking at right here, and then go on to pollinate. But this little sweat bee is tied to populations of black bears, squirrels, white-tailed deer, and cedar waxwing.
Okay.
And the tie is that flower.
Interesting.
Do you recognize that flower? It's kind of a close-up.
Yeah, I'm not, so.
It's actually, it's a dogwood.
A dog? Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. Okay,
yeah.
I see the four.
Yeah, we see the four petals now.
okay.
Yeah, so then, of course, that flower will eventually turn into berries, which are, dogwood berries are an incredibly important staple in the diets for a lot of different wildlife species, but deer like them, our songbirds love them. Squirrels, of course, and black bears will all munch on them.
On those dogwood berries, which
Yeah.
disappear very quickly. Yes,
Very quickly,
Yeah.
right. So,
Yes.
our woodlands are providing homes and resources for pollinators, and then they, in turn, are providing important resources to the wildlife as well.
Wow. So yeah, just all those important interconnections that we
Yes.
that we continue to see. But good to continually, as we think about the benefits of the forest, it's easy to miss things like the role that it has for pollinators.
Right,
So, yeah.
right.
So, so we've talked a lot about oak ecosystems and their connection to wildlife, but of course there are other sources of nutrition and other resources from other species in the forest.
Right.
So maybe it's a good time to transition and talk about some of that.
That sounds great.
All right.